January 4th, 2021. Inner and outer relativity. This just came to me because I had been thinking about, for years now, the theory of etheric flux. And I found out that the universe was a fluid of zero viscosity and zero density, and it's called ether, A-E-T-H-E-R. And that ether flows inward in a spiral, tornado, and the tip of the tornado keeps going forward at what we see as the speed of light. That's the fundamental flow pattern that repeats at all size scales. Just like in the ocean, whirlpools form and other patterns, waves on the surface. The same way, those kind of waves form at smaller size scales in the ether and larger size scales. And we belong to the ether of the larger size scale. And inside our ether, which flows inward like a tornado, we are looking into our bodies and into each other's bodies, and we're full of universes. So the reason I'm going to call this theory inner and outer relativity is because in the same way that your clock slows down, in my view, when you're traveling at the speed of light, when you go inward, your clock speeds up, from my point of view. And when you go outward, your clock slows down from my point of view. And the reason I say slow down is because in the larger universe, if somebody would happen to evolve that had a watch that ticked, and if their seconds were the same as our seconds, for them, in other words, they had just as much thought and activity go by in their mind as we have in our second. So that would be their second. So to us, their second is 1,000,000 years or more, and maybe like 10 to the 42 years or some fancy number like that. And then to them, our second is like 10 to the minus 42 seconds. So that's the theory, and the math will depend on the rate of change of time differences compared to me. Like, say, if I say, okay, I am the basis. We'll do all the calculations based on me, since I'm the center of the universe, or at least I am in my point of view, and we all agree on that. And then you can take it, if this is the equation, I'll give it to you. You can use that equation for yourself, and you'll be the center of the universe. Nobody's left out. So, from the point of view of the center of the universe, where our the observer is, time is a measure of how many events go by you. Like, maybe you might say, in one size scale, one event, like in our size scale, one event is the exchange of a single photon from one electron orbital to another electron orbital. In other words, if an electron goes to a higher orbital, and while it does so, it absorbs a photon, say from the sun, because it hit maybe a chlorophyll molecule, so the electron goes to a higher orbital. And now the electron is a higher energy electron because it swallowed that photon from the sun that helped it lift up to a higher orbital. And it's really the twisting motion of the ether. It just twists a little faster so it can go further around the nucleus, to simplify it. We can admit in this theory that each subsequent size scale level up or down isn't really going to be exactly the same as our universe. I mean, maybe it's a mirror, but maybe it's not, So let's just not assume either one. We just don't know. Probably not, though. Or maybe every once in a while you'll run into one that's the same, whatever. But all we can do is metaphorically think that if it was like ours, here's what it would be. But since we have no idea how that fractal pattern would develop of the etheric flow, we don't really know how we can predict that, unless they're so smart that they figured out how to come to this universe. Okay, so, and maybe that the small people can travel up to the bigger levels, and or it could be that the bigger levels can only travel to the smaller levels. This may be what people dream of as realms, you know? Like if you go to the inner realm, then you might come back 1 second later, but you might seem like you lived 1,000,000 lifetimes, you know? But then if you somehow had some machine that you could come back. But you could never go there because you're not made of their matter. So the only way you could go there would be to somehow communicate with them with AI or something. Well, I don't think we know how to do that yet. At least not publicly, because I sure don't know how. So, inner and outer relativity is, okay, we all agree that special relativity exists. And that as you approach the speed of light, your clock slows down. You also get shorter. You appear shorter to the person far away, you know. The time is what matters. Inner and outer relativity. So in the same way that we have a different time scale when we're moving and we're accelerating away from the observer and when we're returning to the observer, in the same way those clocks shift, you accept that, right? And all you're doing is moving. Well, my point is, if you had a robot that could shrink itself somehow, then it would shrink itself and it would go into that universe of the next level down, and it would find maybe a habitable life form that's composed of etheric wiggles that are semi-stable and very complicated and coherent and resonant and beautifully designed to make an intelligent entity that communicates with other intelligent entities and finds bliss, because our logos is made of love. Well, it's like a superfluid. 0 viscosity and 0 density. Inner and outer relativity. So when you get smaller and smaller and smaller, the universes within your body and within the subatomic particles of your body, those universes are going by so fast that, you know how when you go into an anthill and the ants go really fast? Well, if you keep getting smaller and smaller, it keeps going faster and faster. So maybe you could use a few data points to try to get a curve. Like you could plot, let's see, let's do this. Okay, you could plot size of animal, or entity, and time scale. So humans, we'll put those in the middle. Okay, so then we're going to go down to 1/10 of a human height is a squirrel height. 1/10 of a squirrel height is a... what animal is 1.5 inches? I'll just put spider. Okay, 1/10 of a spider is a ladybug. A 1/10 of a ladybug is a flea. 1/10 of a flea is a... let's just cheat a little bit. Bacteria. And a 1/10 of a bacteria is a... we're going to cheat again. Atom. And then, you know, we're going to go down to, you know, the next universe down. Universe smaller. You know, we're just going to cut it in half like that, okay? So what you do is you plot, so the time goes by so fast there that we're going to say if you approach 0 size, you know, this way, if you approach from big to 0, the limit is infinity. And then somewhere we're going to get these points so that we can fit this curve, okay? And what we're going to find is that the big stuff, you know, like the galaxy and, and nebula, out here they have a very small time scale that approaches, it approaches 0. See? This distance right here approaches 0. So the time approaches 0. So the bigger you get, the slower your clock clicks. So that means going bigger is the same as going the speed of light. Going bigger, clock slows. Going smaller, clock speeds up. I'm going to put an asterisk on both of those and say, with respect to me, the observer on Earth. So, it may not have to be jumping universes. This principle also fits for jumping size scales of animals, like, you know, atom. So because of the smaller universe, dot dot dot, subatomic, particle, atom, molecule, cell, organ, body, and then we humans form, you know, house, country, world. So then Gaia. If we form a social memory complex and all of us are connected on the internet, then that informational flow is like the brain of a sustainable planet. Because it needs to be self-sustainable, so it'll be a living planet that has a consciousness called the World Wide Web network, where all the humans connect to each other. And, you know, certain ones are more brainy than others, like they're sort of like the brain and the planners, you know, the presidents and all that stuff. And then the cells and the organs of the body, you know, the people that grow the food, the people that, the police, or the immune system. And if Gaia had a autoimmune disease, then it might be the police would hurt others too much, and that's like an autoimmune where you hurt your own cells. Your own immune system is destroying your own body because it somehow doesn't realize that it's part of itself. So what we need to do as parts of this Gaia biosphere is we need to realize that we're part of the living organism. And if we hurt another, we're hurting ourselves because they're part of us. We're, you know, it's like your immune cells hurting your own tissue, you know? So that's cool. But back to the relativity. I think that what I can do, oh, where's my page? I think I can mathematically do this mathematically, okay? Find out where humans are on the curve, right? And that would be, and I bet you it's going to be a mathematically beautiful thing, like at 1, 1, you know? Because it's supposed to be 1, like 1 human height, you know, we just have a magic number, 6 feet, right? Or 5 feet, whatever. So, what number? I call that, how many humans is that? 1. And how many seconds? 1. So let's say the math is exactly the same as special relativity. Would that imply that when you travel the speed of light, you get bigger? So this discussion that I've just had, I've documented my idea, and now I have to write a to-do list. One is I have to look up special theory and document those equations in my journal. I mean, I don't memorize them and I'm not going to rederive them, but I'm familiar with them. Familiar enough. And I'm going to look at them and daydream a bit and see if those match the inward-outward. And if they don't match, they definitely match directionally. So the first thing I have to do is look at the equations. And the second is get my equations. And then third is to do a video with the presentation. For you. And so you can see how I think and how I develop my theory of Aetheric flux. I keep thinking of instances, and then I explain each instance. I guess it's kind of like doing physics problems, isn't it? So